My guest today is the conductor of and music director of the Battle Creek Symphony Orchestra, a longtime guest and friend, Anne Harrigan. Welcome back.
Well, good morning, Cara, and happy March.
Yeah, as of yesterday.
Loving to see the sunshine driving down here, and it's wonderful to be able to talk about live music.
I know.
And the concert coming up.
I know. This has been at least 2 years in the making, at least the idea for this concert and the world premiere that it will bring to us. That's, of course, at 7:30 in WMUK Kellogg Auditorium this Saturday. It's called The New World, and there's a good reason for that, too. Dvorak.
Yes, we are going to be featuring Dvorak's New World Symphony and also a new world piece, a new world premiere by James Lee, which is called Hold On, America, Hold On. I'm sure we'll be talking about it.
Yes. Of course, we can't excerpt it.
No,
like we normally would.
That's exactly right. I mean, I'll be hearing it live for the first time tonight.
Wow. This piece brings together some unusual forces. It has stories with it that will be told. And, of course, we're going to, as soon as we, in a few minutes, maybe in about 10 minutes, we'll loop in Gerald Case-Blanchard, who was integral in the creation of the piece. So we'll get his perspective as well.
Oh, he's just so fantastic. It'll be great to hear from him. So, yes, this is an interesting marriage of two very different pieces, but having similarities. Of course, Dvorak, a Czech composer, a bohemian at the time, coming to America, he was heavily recruited by the New York Conservatory to come with the idea that he was going to show those American composers how to write in the American style, which I don't think necessarily was a big hit at the time for, all the American composers who probably felt like, well, who are we, chopped liver? But the reason was because a lot of American composers were emulating the Germanic style, the German European style, kind of copying Beethoven,
They went, when they wanted to learn to compose, they crossed the Atlantic, went to European conservatories and came back to America and wrote music that sounded kind of European.
Exactly. So that's what's kind of interesting. So when Dvorak came here, he was really fascinated with America. So he went all the way out west to Spillville, Iowa.
Yeah, for a good reason.
And
he could speak his native tongue there.
Yes. And he would check out the Native American traditions in the Buffalo Bill Show.
Wow.
So his understanding of American culture and diversity was in some ways very limited to the times, but on the other hand, much more interested than the New Yorkers and the Bostonians, who were making zero effort to find out what was going on in the rest of the country. And he was fascinated, and he wrote and he stated that the future of American music must include incorporating indigenous music. This is in the late 1800s. And so when he wrote the New World Symphony, he tried to set that example and saying, you cannot ignore Native American music. You cannot ignore African American music when you're writing. This is part of who America is, and that's what the New World Symphony attempts to do.
Does he actually does he borrow melodies from tribes or African American communities in this?
What a great question. Thank you. As a matter of fact, he was very careful not to, out of respect. He did not want to appropriate anything. So he was inspired by what he heard, and he took it, incorporated it into his feeling, and then he wrote something that would give a testament to the sounds that he heard.
These stories I've known for some time because they just stand out. And Dvorak himself was a humble fellow, and his devotion to his own country and culture is partly why America thought he could kind of come over and mentor, because he was so good at bringing this Czech spirit to life in his music.
Exactly. That was the founding of what they called the Nationalist School, where starting composers like Sibelius and Dvorak were starting to write not a more universal sound, but something that reflected their own tongue. Later on Bartók, for example, would really think about the language and the feeling of their own country and how they could reflect that and honor that in their own music. And so you're right, Dvorak sort of stood out as one of the leaders of the nationalist school.
Now, can you think of any American composers that actually did hear his advice at the time or later on? Or did it take a while to sink in?
Well, I'm going to have to do some fact-checking on my dates, but I can tell you one right off the bat, Florence Price.
Oh, Miss Florence Price.
Yeah, Florence Price, who was writing very near to that time, and she wrote music that Dances of the Cannebraques, for example, that would reflect different life, activities. So yes, there were composers who were ignored for many years, and now we're having a resurgence. But those would be the first ones, I think, that would jump out.
William Grant's still writing with both American and original African melodies in his music. More also a composer who didn't receive the acclaim he should have, although probably is still the most recognized composer from let's say a couple generation, or at least one generation after Dvorak.
I would say so, yes.
So yeah, if we're talking like the late 90s, 1890s, yes. We are talking about that generation that was very much influenced by Europeans and slowly started to find ways to Americanize their music. But it would be a while before Copland came along.
Exactly, Copland, Gershwin, Bernstein, quite a while.
And this piece must be, you could probably sing the whole thing, and a lot of us could. Even I've never played it physically, like with an orchestra, but it's just somehow in me because I've heard it enough times. That's something you can bring to this score. Then you have the exact opposite situation with the world premiere. Is it a different headspace or a different kind of feeling of responsibility?
Oh, yes, it certainly is. In order to take a new piece, which that I've never heard, and it's got a different sensibility. I have heard other works by James Lee, of course, which is why I commissioned his work, because I think he's so incredibly brilliant. But you're operating just from the page. Now, one of the things that's really different with the new piece is that there's text, and the text can and does inform the music. The text came first and was written actually in sections over the last 2 years and was sent to James, and then he would write the music to the text. So I know the text as well as I know Dvorak's New World Symphony because I worked with the actors and the performers who created the text. I mean, that was one of the things that was very interesting with the project when we were like, well, who's going to write the libretto? And we realized that the performers were going to write the libretto, and then James would edit it, and put it in there. And so it's very different, but for a new piece, it's very interesting because I'm going back to kind of my old school, graduate school. Mr. Otto Werner Müller was my teacher, and there was a system. It's actually a colored system in which you use to learn scores like The Rite of Spring, or Petrushka, or Beethoven's Fifth for that matter. And so I'm going back to that old structure of first you study this, then you study this, then you study this, and hopefully by the end you've got everything, crossing fingers.
We are going to call Dr. Gerald Case-Blanchard to get his thoughts on this as one of the performers and contributors to Hold On, America, Hold On. That's the name of the work that will be premiered Saturday. In the meantime, a little bit of the Dvorak. Let's start with, not at the beginning, the scherzo?
Yes, let's start with the scherzo, which was influenced by, the powwow dances and the liveliness and the rhythms that you hear.
From the New World Symphony, we heard the third movement, Scherzo, and we're listening with the conductor of the Battle Creek Symphony, Anne Harrigan. And joining us now, all the way from Pennsylvania, I think, Dr. Gerald Case-Blanchard. Welcome to Classical WMUK. I'm so glad you could join us to talk about this world premiere that's coming on Saturday.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Well, it's time to move on from Dvorak and hear about Hold On, America. Hold On. 2 years ago in May, George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, and it changed the world, it changed society, and that rippled even out to orchestras and the classical music world, which has made some changes since. And on the ground in Battle Creek, Anne, you first took a hard look at Battle Creek Symphony and what you could do. And this is one of probably the proudest moments you might have, a creation of a new piece that speaks directly to the Black experience in America.
Well, thank you, Cara. Well, I'm really happy that Dr. Blanchard could be here because he's one of two people who's really the seminal people in creating this work, which is a huge thing for us. It's a major work by one of the top composers in the country, Dr. James Lee, who I met when he was having a work performed by the Chicago Symphony. And we had struck up a friendship. But Gerald had posted a video that, to say that it blew my mind would be such an understatement because it was so personal. And I've known Gerald as a phenomenal performer and a teacher and a collaborator for many, many years. And yet I never really knew him in this way. And Gerald, maybe you could kind of talk about that video and what inspired you to record it and post it.
Certainly. I will start by saying, first of all, thank you both for allowing me to be a part of this discussion. For me, the video, it happened organically. And anyone who has seen it, it was not scripted. I was sitting at my kitchen table, and I was just pondering all of the things that were occurring in the year of 2020. Social injustice, the politics, just everything. And it had just gotten so heavy. And I believe in taking care of oneself from a mental health standpoint. And I don't just hold things in. I am a creative person. So I started to sing, and that wasn't working. So I started to write, and that wasn't working. I said, okay, something has to go. So I decided to sit down. I turned my phone on, and I just spoke from my heart. And, it was the Breonna Taylor. It was the, Ahmaud Arbery. It was George Floyd. It was the young man, Christian Cooper, I believe is his name, dealing with the Central Park and watching Bird and people calling the police. All of those things just came together, and it just was so heavy on my heart. So I looked in the camera, and I just spoke my truth. I spoke my feelings, being very mindful of my position. So I was being honest, but yet I also just wanted to make it very clear that we as America needed to hold on. And that song, Keep Your Hand on the Plow, which is a spiritual, hold on, is something that I'm very familiar with. My grandmother used to sing it to me when I was a kid. I sang it a lot, and the words spoke volumes to me, and that word, that phrase, just hold on, it just kept coming back, and that's why I titled the video America Hold On. And for me, it was hold on, slow down, pause, let's breathe, let's sort of recalibrate what's happening in our land right now and what we can all do to sort of navigate our way through this and get on a path where we're all healthier, happier, and working together as a society. The other part of that was looking at the songs that we sing, the national anthem, reading the text, the preamble, and all these things that talk about freedom and balance and hope and dreams for all of us. That I was not seeing because of the melanin that is in my skin. But the thing that really tipped me over, as I expressed in my portion of this composition was when I sat down with my son and he looked me in the eyes and asked me, Daddy, why do people try to hurt people that look like us? Well, being a father of, I'm getting emotional, I'm sorry, being a father of a now 9-year-old black child, I can't protect him from what's happening in this world. So that broke my heart, but it also made me realize I have to do more. I have to use my position more. I'm a very visible person in my community. I need to do more. And that's sort of what prompted that video to occur. And I am just so thankful and grateful that, Anne saw it. And, that, and along with other things, this idea started to percolate, and then just the pieces of the puzzle came together. And when she called and said that this was happening, at first I looked at my phone. She doesn't know this, but I looked at my phone. I'm like, really? Are you serious? And it was true. And so I am just so happy and honored to be a part of it, and to have Robert McFletcher, who is also part of this project, who is a former student of mine, having Altamiece Cooper, she and I have worked together recently, and we've always talked about working together, being a part of this. Her mother, Carolyn Ballard, who I've known since I moved to Battle Creek, being a part of this. It's like a community of us coming together, and our voices are being heard in a creative way by producing an artistic work where hopefully our audience will be not only questioning their own perceptions about people and challenging themselves to change where change needs to occur, but also being in a position where we collectively can come together and hopefully begin a dialogue that will result in a betterment of our community and hopefully ultimately our society.
You might not have been thinking that 2 years ago when you recorded the video, and here we are with the premiere set for Saturday at 7:30 in WK Kellogg Auditorium. Anne, what did you send? What message did you send to Gerald about after you'd seen the video and thought about how to respond?
Well, this was sort of a perfect storm of things that happened because for me, the day after the murder of George Floyd, I was really stunned. And I was also in downtown Grand Rapids where everything was boarded up. And actually there was a local writer who wrote about a piece of this. And there was a couple things I thought about. I thought about Joel Thompson, the composer in the 7 Last Words of Unarmed Men, because he wrote a piece for choir and orchestra. And I thought about that, and then I thought about James Lee, who I just met, a few months ago in Chicago, and everything sort of fell in on me, and I reached out to James just to kind of connect up with him, because one of those things we'd been talking about doing a piece, and we get busy, we don't do it. All of a sudden, so I just kind of reached out to him, and he said, I really feel a need to do something. I said, well, let's talk about it. And then Gerald's video came out. And I sent it to James. I said, I think this is it. I think this is it right here, what we should do. And then on top of it, like more and more people were opening up in a way that I could never do that. I was just so stunned by the honesty and the inspiration, but that these people had. And Robert McFletcher Jones was one of them. And actually there was an article that's on our website that told his story. He told his story about what happened to him. And then another person, Sean Washington, who is very big in the community, is a storyteller, works with a lot of troubled youth. He told his story. And so it sort of came to me that what I needed to do was to tell the stories. But the problem is, if I can be frank, that as a person of my generation, and Susan Balba, our executive director, we talked about this, we lived in this bubble of oblivion, obliviousness, in which we thought this was all done. This was all taken care of during the civil rights. We couldn't believe it. And yet there's my colleagues, my black colleagues, they're experiencing this every day. And so we were living such different lives. And part of it is because we really didn't know our history. And I did more research, and I realized that you can't understand the incredible frustration and anger and fear that's going on in Robert McFletcher Jones's head if you don't know about the Tulsa Massacre. You can't understand what's going through somebody's mind if you don't know the story about Emmett Till and you don't know the history of what has happened to young black men over the years, not just, the Civil War and what we've all taught in schools. And so I did some digging, and what I did is I reached out to some of the strongest people I knew, and then James said, "Where's the libretto?" I was like, oh. I thought, well, and so I asked the performers to write the libretto, and they wrote their hearts out. They wrote volumes, and James had to sort of, fit it in because it would have been, a Mahler symphony.
An oratorio.
Oh, it was fantastic, just fantastic. And so Carolyn Ballard, who was well-known and beloved in the community, I just, threw out some different subjects. She said, "I'm writing Emmett Till." And she was like, "And nobody's taken it away from me. I'll tell Altamiece, who's a graduate from WMUK, by the way." And so what she did, and in some ways that and Gerald's introduction really framed things. I was wondering, how is this going to work? Because here we've got Gerald is telling his personal story, right? Robert McFletcher Jones is telling his story. Sean's telling his story, but Carolyn's not going to be telling her story. Well, she did. She turned herself into the mother of Emmett Till. And she told the story straight from the perspective of the mother of Emmett Till. And it was graphic. I mean, when I read this, it just completely, hair on fire. It was like, this story needs to be told, because I didn't know it in that level of detail. And so there were things like that, the way that these performers took on a role as dramaturgs and librettists, which wasn't originally, what would be expected of an actor. And they just were amazing. And they spent months going through this. So this is something that took a long time of soul searching and editing and studying. And so in the end, we came up with these 5 stories. But James, it was kind of like the Rhapsody in Blue with Gershwin. James was under a deadline, and it was taking so long because there's so much soul searching involved that he was getting it in bits and pieces. So Gerald was first, and then I think actually it was Carolyn and then Altamiece who took on the Tulsa Massacre from the point of view of one of the last living survivors. And so that testimony. So it was just an amazing experience to see how the text developed, and then how James would take that text in pieces and write music to it.
This is all going to be heard for the very first time Saturday night at 7:30 in the New World concert from the Battle Creek Symphony in WK Kellogg Auditorium. Gerald, you and your colleagues wrote personal things from the heart, and you're all very seasoned performers. You know how to get up there and connect with an audience. But does this create an added vulnerability in your mind to bringing this to stage?
To really be honest, I had a hard time writing this. I kept getting angry, frustrated. I must have written it and had maybe 14 versions of it before I finally just decided I'm sending it. It is what it is, and that's it. And it wasn't because of me, from an intellectual standpoint, trying to make it perfect. It was having to face these realities. And speaking for myself, and I'm sure this is a common theme amongst a lot of people, I'm tired. I am exhausted. Having to deal with and struggle through day to day, justifying and proving who I am and why I am worth being in the place that I am. And that is a common struggle across many, many groups of individuals. Now, obviously, Black people are not a monolith. We are from varying backgrounds, experiences. But to tell my story, and there are many, many stories that I just omitted, ranging from being at Brooks Brothers and being followed by a security guard, from one end of the store to the next. And I actually at the time was a gold Brooks Brothers card holder, but it was because of the color of my skin. They felt they couldn't trust me, and they didn't know who I was. So it's those kinds of things. And every time you write those things down, or you have to express them outwardly, you are forced to deal with them first and try to put them in a way where they can be understood by those who are not experienced it at that time. So it took a very, very long time for me to deal with that. And the word vulnerable is so true because you are exposing yourself. You're putting it out there. People who know me as being, this teacher, a performer who, think I have everything nicely in order and can manage a whole lot of stuff. They don't realize that when I was doing my video or when I was talking to my son, that tears were coming down my eyes. They didn't realize as I was sitting at my computer writing these stories that I had to stop and just walk away for a bit because I got so emotional. One point, my son came up behind me as I was writing, and I had my hand on my head, and he just came and gave me a hug and a kiss because he knew what I was trying to do. So it's those things people don't see. So, yes, you put that out there, and hopefully, it's not to say, woe is me, but hopefully to get people to step back and say, you know what, we are all human. We need to do better at being human and showing compassion to one another, no matter where we come from, what we look like, what our orientation is, the language we speak. We are all sharing this planet together, and we need to do better at doing that. So for me, vulnerable, yes, very vulnerable. Hard, yes, that is true.
Is there some comfort in sharing the stage with your friends who are also sharing their stories at the same time?
Yes, it is. And it's really interesting. I love how Carolyn and Altamiece are using historical things that have occurred, and it's being put together with the realities of today. So you sort of have a historical connected to contemporary experience, and it's like one tapestry that's telling a wide variety, and there's something for everyone to relate to. But to know that even within those stories, there's a line. I look at it as a musical line. We start at the beginning on the first note, and we end at the last possible note, and everything within is all connected. And so when you look at these stories, even though the topics, the focus are different, there is still one consistent line, and it's that struggle and trying to navigate through the realities of the world for which we live in. And that's something that we all share, whether you're black, white, Jewish, gay, straight, fat, skinny, tall, short, whatever. We all struggle, but some things you can't hide. And the melanin that's in our skin, there's an immediate visceral reaction to that for some people. And that's the challenge. But those stories have that single line that goes through.
Even before the music begins, the audience, primarily a white audience, will see a stage that is fronted by marvelous black artists. And it's something that we hope to see more and more. I got to see it with Guys and Dolls last fall. So it's a powerful image to begin with. I want to turn, though, to what James Lee, the composer, had to juggle. I mean, this sounds like an enormous task to bring together all these narratives. And can you describe the music to me at all, Anne or Gerald, if you've delved in?
Oh, yeah, we've delved in. And I think I saw Gerald sent me a video with a picture of the score on his stand and highlighting, so I know he's also really spent a lot of time with it. Gerald, do you want to take a shot at it, or do you want me to start?
I'll just throw this out really quickly. I listened to this piece, and obviously because it's a world premiere, a brand new piece, we're listening to a MIDI file.
Yeah.
So all the colors, the richness, and everything that occurs with a real live human orchestra is going to be very different. But what I was able to pull, and being a conductor, I look at it different ways. So I look at it as a performer, but I can also look at it, from a conducting standpoint and obviously a musical theory concept and composition concept. But I think Dr. Lee has painted a series of portraits. That's kind of how I look at it. Each section seems, to my ear, to sort of create a auditory image that the listener will experience. If you just close your eyes and listen, sometimes it's chaotic, sometimes it's beautiful, very lyrical, other times it's disjointed. And then with the text in there, it's like as one phrase is being indicated textually, musically, that's either replicated or complete opposite, to show or demonstrate, the vast difference in reality, of the person who was experiencing the way it's being interpreted by people of the world. So I think he did a phenomenal job, and I personally am like vibrating because I cannot wait to be in that auditorium, listening to that orchestra and feeling the energy that comes from really having those notes being played and the words, becoming a part of that. I'm a singer, so usually I'm singing everything. I only sing 8 notes in this whole thing. But it's great. It is great because the 8 notes that I sing are powerful in terms of their statement. So that's it. I'll let you take it over, Anne, because I'll talk about this and get all excited.
No. It's
I'm excited.
For starters, it's so incredibly exciting to be here in this week because this was very much an if. For a long time we had to get the funding, we had to get the people together. We're supported by the National Endowment for the Arts, but we had to wait and see. This is a big project, and then the time it took, as we heard, to write the piece. So here we are. The first rehearsal is tonight. James is coming tomorrow. But I look at a lot of different composers, and I look at our audiences, and I want to find the right fit. And when I heard James for the very first time, it was probably November 2019, and I heard his music at Chicago Symphony, I thought, this is fantastic. I want to bring this music to Battle Creek because he uses so many different palettes. It's his colors of the orchestra. He's actually from St. Joseph, Michigan, and he's a University of Michigan graduate. But he really gets how to draw the audience in, and it can be very, very beautiful, and it has a lot of contrasts, and he did a wonderful job, as Gerald said, painting the text and setting the stage. I think probably the most entertaining is if you go online, there's a blog that was written about just one of the stories. And it was tough for me because every story is so important. But, the writer chose to focus in on one particular story about Robert and his personality. And you can just see the sunshine and Robert's personality as he's waving to everybody, riding his bike. And you listen to the music and you can hear that kind of spring day, late spring day, and all the flowers and the birds and everything is fantastic. Just get that feeling. And then, the way he'll twist things on a dime, it's very interesting. There's a lot of subito dynamic changes, whereas things will really build up and then you'll just drop down to a pianissimo so that a word can be heard. Or sometimes there's no music at all, just so a phrase can really stand out with that. So I think that given, the amount of time he had, he's never met any of these people. He's only known them through their written word. He did a beautiful job of connecting, and we struggled. We looked at this, he says, wow, people have written from their hearts, and honestly, this can be dark. And so he said, I want my music sometimes to counteract that, so that, but they are important stories to be told. They are dark stories. They are, as Gerald said, important. At some point, Robert says, we need to be heard. Our stories need to be heard loudly. And so it's important. And sometimes we're not comfortable. We're going to be uncomfortable, but that's okay because it's a great piece of music. And not all of Mahler is comfortable. Not all of Beethoven is comfortable, but we've gotten used to that kind of discomfort, right? But now we're going to get used to a great piece of music with great performers. And I'm, as you can say, so excited and grateful to all of my collaborators for the second major world premiere. And I think this is going to be one of the greatest works I've ever premiered.
I'm reminded of the James Baldwin quote, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced.
Oh,
It's
perfect.
faced. That's right.
And we have a chance to witness stories from beloved community members this Saturday at 7:30, and be the witness to the first time it's ever told. It's a wonderful, unforgettable opportunity for people from West Michigan to both witness and enjoy this new work. It is called, let me remind listeners, it's called Hold On, America, Hold On. And that's thanks to you, Gerald.
Thank you. I know I've been telling all of my friends and family, if you are in the Battle Creek area, they really need to come and experience this. But I want to go back to what you said really quickly, Cara, where you said it's a predominantly white audience that will be experiencing this. It is my hope that it's not. I hope it is a very mixed audience. I hope to see an audience of many different shapes, colors, and just different energies in that space. Because even though we're talking about Black experience, if you really get down to the core, it is something for everyone, something that everyone has experienced on some level. I'm not saying you've experienced racism, but if you are a woman, I kind of share this with my friends often when they say, I don't see color. I don't, worry about that. I treat everyone equal. But I try to say to them, if you don't live in that world, it's easy to say that because you don't have anything at risk. Whereas I tell my female friends and my male friends the same, I'm not a woman, so I don't live in that world. I don't understand 100% the struggles that a female has to encounter every single day, just going from point A to point Z within the course of a day. So therefore, I don't necessarily expect someone who is not Black to understand what a Black person goes through all day, every day. But what I do hope and actually expect is that they are mindful and aware of their reactions and their prejudices, whether it is external or internal, covert or overt, being mindful of those things. Because if you are not mindful of something, just like I tell my students, if you don't know you're doing something wrong, you can't fix it. So if you're not aware that there is a issue, then obviously you're not going to better yourself. But as long as you're aware and you're willing to put in the work to actually help make things better, then I think we are moving in the right direction as a society. So going back to that idea of having more of a mixed audience, I hope the people that are there leave not only just enjoying the artistic expression, but have a greater message of compassion and community. And hopefully they will then give a little bit of that more and more as they return to their own smaller communities.
I certainly hope so, too.
Well, here we are at the end of our time together today, and I know there's a lot of work to be done by Saturday. Dr. Gerald Case-Blanchard, thank you so much for joining us from afar and sharing your thoughts. I'll give Anne a final wrap-up, a reminder of when and where and how to get tickets.
So, yes, this is this Saturday in Battle Creek, Michigan, at the W.K. Kellogg Auditorium at 7:30 p.m. Concert cues start at 6:40. We'll have opportunity to hear from the composer a little bit, and we certainly hope that everybody will come and celebrate this new world premiere.
Thank you both.
Thank you.